We'll try that again. You hearing me okay over there? Good morning, everybody. The final day of the World Water Forum number 10. And here you are at a session that is discussing connections. And I guess we've had a week of connections behind us. Speaking to everybody that I've run into over here, I always ask, well, how's your week at the Water Forum been? What interesting sessions have you been listening to? What kind of political declarations are interesting? And the main point that they talk about is connections. And that's really the value of coming together like this over here in a session. So we will take that theme of connections into another dimension. From the year 2012, humanity became a predominantly urbanized species. There are more of us living in cities today than living in rural areas. Africa and Asia will move into becoming majority urbanized by the year 2030. And yet we find that cities are very little engaged in the catchments that serve them. Cities are treated like islands. We plug water in on this side, effluent comes out on that side, and that's it. That's urban water management. And what we are saying here is that needs to change. Cities need to become more engaged in catchment management, in conserving the catchments that serve them, which are very often located outside of their municipal boundaries. And yet it's important that they invest in these catchments. And of course it goes upstream as well as downstream. So cities really become nodes in a network connected to ecosystems, connected to other water users, connected to other communities that also rely on those same waters. So here on the final day of the Water Forum, we've assembled a group of panelists that will share with us some stories, some reflections on their work, how they've been engaged in working with cities, getting connected to their catchments a bit better. And this group has been handpicked because all of them have some inspirational story to share with us, as well as some lessons learned that they can be sharing. So I'm really looking forward to hearing what they say. We'll hear from each of them. And after that, we'll also have some questions and answer sessions with you, the audience. So then we'll move right forwards. Right, I'll move right along. We've got one substitution from our first speaker. That's a change. I'll invite the Director of the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation from the government of Kenya, Mr. Andrew Kinyua, to come up and speak and share a little bit about what's happening in Kenya in terms of working on catchments linking with the urban areas. Andrew, can I invite you up over here, share your story?
Thank you very much. I'm actually very thrilled to be here. Thank you, Anton. Thank you even for inviting us. Yes, I'm Andrew Kinyua. I'm the Director of Water Resources in the Ministry of Water, Sanitation and Irrigation. As you can guess from the word, matters, water resources are very important today because we want now to concentrate on catchment protections, catchment management. In the past, we have concentrated more on laying of the infrastructure, laying of the pipes. But these pipes are getting dry. In fact, today, there are places in Nairobi where water has got to be rationed. We cannot get the water the 7 days of week. We are getting it maybe 2 or 3 days of the week. So it is time that we concentrated more in allocating resources to matters, in allocating financial resources to resources than matters of laying of infrastructure. That is where we are today. And recently we have had a program which we are calling matchmaking, where the private sector is coming to join government, and they have pledged to match what the government is giving. Every dollar that the government gives, then there are some companies that we have invited from the private sector that have pledged to match what the government is doing, and we are very happy with that. So we have invited some companies to come and join us in catchment management and catchment protection activities in the upper Athi catchment. This catchment is the one that feeds the water that is used in Nairobi. So this is something that is still ongoing. And we are happy that some banks, we are happy we have some partners that have signed in and they want to participate in this matchmaking initiative. And we're happy also we have some, like Global Water Partnership has facilitated especially the initial process in making this possible. So this we know is going to be a success. But again, we also as government, we want to up our game in matters of enforcement, because another problem we are having in our urban setups is that we have a lot of wastewater which is finding its way into the aquatic environment, and matters enforcement have been a bit wanting. So we are upping our game as government, but we again because of some limitations in resources, we are partnering with other partners to come and help us in matters of monitoring of the wastewater that is from this urban setup, that instead of getting full treatment is being released into our water resources when it is only partially treated. So we are partnering with some organizations to help us so that this monitoring is going to convince anybody who has doubts now that our waters, our natural waters are getting polluted because of continuous and increase of urbanization. Because in my country now, the rural-urban migration is happening very fast. So many people are moving from the rural setups and they are coming to urban areas. And we have some settlements that have come up and they have not gone to areas that have been zoned. So that is an area which we want to work very hard so that only areas that have been approved for setting up a residential area are allowed. Because at the moment we have a situation where some informal urban setups are coming and they don't have a good wastewater treatment facility. So the wastewater is finding its way into our fragile water sources. So that is an area that we are working on, and it is works in the making. And I know that we are going to continue improving. So I'm inviting you out there, if you can come especially and partner with us in those two, either in the matchmaking or this one that I've last talked about monitoring of the wastewater that is getting into our water sources that are fragile, then you are welcome and we'll be very happy. I think I'm going to stop there for now, Anton, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Andrew. I really like that invitation of the matchmaking, but you also mentioned monitoring, which I think is also very important to be looking at, monitoring what is happening. So I'm going to call up on our next panelist, and we'll call on you again shortly. Brooke Atwell with the Nature Conservancy, who has actually been doing a lot of this work. I mean, I see TNC, of course, you and your colleagues doing this globally, and we'd love to hear about some of your experiences.
Of course, thank you, Anton. Yeah, so like all of you, I've been requested to tell a story. And so I'm going to take us back to 2013 in New Mexico and Colorado in the United States, when these massive, devastating Los Conchos wildfires ripped through nearly 160,000 acres of forest. It was completely devastating. Thousands of people were displaced. And then immediately following the fires, there was just this deluge of rain. Normally very welcome in a fire-adapted landscape. Occasionally you want some rain to quell the fires and the flames. However, as many of you probably know, scorched earth is impenetrable. The water rolls right on off of it, taking all that silt into the local waterways, clogging up water supply for the downstream cities of Albuquerque and Santa Fe. As a result of that, the city approached the Nature Conservancy, WWF, U.S. Forest Service, and the Rio Grande Pueblo people. There are about 27 tribes in the area that were affected, to come up with some sort of collective action mechanism to protect against devastating wildfires like that in the future. Their goal is 20-year program protecting 600,000 acres of dry conifer pine forest. So because it's naturally fire adapted, they are doing controlled burns to protect against future devastating wildfires, kind of reducing that risk. They are also looking at, if anybody knows about beavers, they are also looking at reintroducing beavers, which build these dams and essentially like extend the floodplain. So if there's been a devastating wildfire, 2 weeks later you can send a drone up over top. That area will be completely green where the beaver's home is. Everything else will be scorched around it, but that area will be green. So they're working with the tribes there to reintroduce beavers to kind of reconnect a lot of those floodplains. And then on top of that, of course, they're reforesting, they're reprotecting areas that were devastated in the first place. There are now 100 signatories onto this kind of collective action mechanism. And I'm going to sail us, or I should say fly us down to Cape Town, where around this time that they had 100 signatories and they were really scaling up the program, Cape Town was also dealing with devastating wildfires and water scarcity. And so Louise Stafford, our program manager there, she actually flew to the Rio Grande to learn about what they were doing and see whether or not they could replicate some of the models that they were applying there in the city of Cape Town. Their entry point at the time was wildfire, but they soon switched to water scarcity because that's really what mattered most to the city of Cape Town. As you know, they had this devastating drought in 2018 where they were about to reach day zero. Reservoirs were virtually dry. And so what they did is they said, City of Cape Town, you've been investing in invasive species removal. We know that the data is there. However, let's do so in a coordinated fashion. Let's get everybody who's working on invasive species removal to join together, sign on to this strategic plan, because invasive species removal on a unit cost basis is 1/10 the unit cost of other great infrastructure solutions that they were considering. The same invasive species, the pine and the eucalyptus, those are the ones that were causing a lot of the devastating fires in the area. So removing those invasive species will generate 3 months of water supply for the city of Cape Town and reduce their fire risk. So there was sort of a north-south exchange that went on, and now they're actually in Rio Grande looking at removing invasive species as a way to reduce their wildfire risk and are now coming back to Cape Town to learn from what they're doing. Thanks, Anton.
Thank you very much, Brooke. And I love it how you speak about partnerships and the collective action that is needed to do these kind of jobs, even going so far as to partner with the beavers, helping you extending floodplains. But that kind of thinking, I think, is great, very much in the spirit. Let's see, we're Dr. Simeon Kenfak from AFWA. I'm not sure if you are here. I didn't have direct contact with him. I know Fred Mwango maybe is coming in a little bit later. But in that, Professor Sharon Magdal of the University of Arizona, where you're the director of the Water Resources Research Center. You also said you're going to be speaking a little bit about what you are working on and share some of the inspirational stories.
Good morning, everybody, and thank you, Anton, for including me. I'm going to a story about the city in which I live. So I live in the city of Tucson, Arizona. That's in the southwestern United States, actually very close to New Mexico that Brooke just talked about. And Tucson has currently in the metropolitan area about 1 million people. About 40 years ago, it was probably 400,000 people. So it's been a rapidly growing area. And it was either the largest city or the second largest city in the world dependent on groundwater, fully dependent on groundwater, until the constructed project to deliver Colorado River water was built. And through that conveyance, Tucson planned to switch over to a surface water supply. And I hadn't planned on talking about that switchover, but the switchover was a disaster. It was a debacle because they didn't study the chemistry enough of the new water, the treated water that was going to come in from a watershed that's very, very large. So this gets to the point of catchment. And we don't use the word catchment in the United States. You probably know that. We talk about watershed. Same thing, watershed. But one of the questions I always like to ask is, and I'm a professor at the University of Arizona, and I work on water policy and management, is which catchment or which watershed are you talking about? Because very often there's a difference in the groundwater watershed and the groundwater feeding into a community versus the river that's traveling far and wide. And also water is transported through a constructed canal. So where does your water come from? That's the question that I often answer when people say to me, well, what do you hope for? What do you hope a community, water users understand? It's where does your water come from? And for those of us who are fortunate to have good quality water 24/7, I don't mean the tap. Is it coming from the ground? Is it coming from the river? So Tucson had a problem. And in fact, another country of the world came to Tucson to try to avoid the problems that we had when introducing desalinated seawater into their system. But the community was resilient. The communities, first of all, the citizens rose up and passed a referendum and said, we don't want this treated river water because it's ruining our pipes. It's causing pipes to burst. And so the city was prohibited from delivering that water unless it met a certain salinity standard. So they had to come up with a plan B. And the plan B was to take and use the aquifers that we had depleted over the years and store some of the surface water there and use those as underground reservoirs and then pull the water back out. So in a state like mine where we don't legally even recognize the connection between surface water and groundwater, we built a system that does do that. And we have a drought resilient system. We've curtailed our groundwater overdraft for the city. And what the city is now doing is promoting the concept of one water. So it gets to the issue of effluent. You know, what about the effluent? What about the wastewater? We're reusing our wastewater either directly. You know, we have a lot of golf courses. We have a lot of ball fields. You know, a lot of turf to be irrigated. Not so much using it for potable water yet. But we're recycling that water. We have strong conservation programs. We're increasing, when I say we, it's the community, increasing attention to stormwater and how to capture that. And so the whole community is around this one water concept. Fundamentally, I don't think the community still thinks about where their water comes from, but it almost doesn't matter because the behavior of the utility is having this one water concept. And I have to say that the city of Tucson is a very progressive city in terms of water management. They're loving to exchange practices and so forth. And I would hope that maybe through your organization that some of the city water officials and elected officials could be part of an exchange. And there is a One Water video. We don't have presentations. I didn't even think I mentioned it. But in the One Water video, they feature some experts, and I was honored to be one of the experts featured in how it's doing a good job of kind of managing the water holistically. So thanks, Anton.
Thank you, Sharon. I like the concept of one water. It gets you thinking about how portable is your potable water. How far does it have to travel to reach your tap? Maybe that's a study one has to look at. Cities that have the longest reach of their water. I know where I live in Pretoria in South Africa, half of our water comes from the Lesotho Highlands, located about 400 kilometers south of us. But you don't think of that every time you're turning on your tap. That water's traveled. Okay, speaking of experience exchange, and we had two speakers refer to that, where Rio Grande, Cape Town, Tucson, all sharing experience. Let's go super local into this part of the world, and I'm going to invite Oscar to come up and speak, who's the managing director of Copernic, and they work here in Bali. So if you ever wondered how water management here in Bali, where we're at a huge conference, actually takes place, Oscar, please share with us.
Thank you so much, Anton. Nice to meet you all. So, yes, I'm Oscar Casal de Rey, Managing Director at Copernic, and based here in Bali, Indonesia, as Anton just mentioned. So, Copernic is an R&D lab for social and environmental issues. So, we're basically trying to find solutions for challenges faced by remote and disadvantaged communities all around Indonesia. In different sectors, from energy and environment, agriculture and fisheries, micro-business support, and also water. So today I want to share a bit more about one of those challenges in water, right here in this very island. So it's about water scarcity as well. And usually when I talk to my colleagues in Europe, I'm from Barcelona, but been living here in Indonesia for 6 years already. So they tell me about, why are you working on water in Indonesia, in Bali? It's a tropical island. You should have plenty of rain there, and no water issues should happen, right? And I always tell them it's not like that. So we have had, particularly in this island, many years of rapid development. That were before the rainwater could filter through the soil to replenish the aquifers. That's not happening anymore. And also constant reduction of tree coverage and forest in upstream areas in Bali, where due to intensive monocrop and chemically heavy agriculture, the soil is not healthy anymore, and a lot of water is already lost as a runoff. Right? So because of that, the water balance in Bali has reached already a critical level where the needs of water are already more than 50% of the water availability here. And not only that is directly linked to issues where vulnerable communities upstream are hit the hardest. So they face, communities, mostly smallholder farmers, and local communities face riverbank erosion, face constant landslides and crop failure. So their very livelihood depends on having a good harvest every year, and they're having less and less every time because of that inability of the soil to retain water anymore. So yeah, that's the problem, the challenge we're trying to solve or find a potential solution. So there is hope. The solution and the case study that I'd like to talk a bit about it today is a pilot that we're running in the Ayung watershed. It's the largest watershed in Bali, and combines upstream communities in the mountain area with midstream and downstream communities and businesses. Both rural and peri-urban in the middle, and more urban settlings in the downstream area. So what we're doing there is a combination of 4 concepts. The first one is the payment for ecosystem services, the PES, or payment for environmental services. So basically it's a financing mechanism to support community water resilience. So it's a voluntary transaction from water users, mostly businesses and mostly downstream and midstream, to upstream or water, environmental services providers, mostly upstream local communities. Right? And it's done in a way that all businesses in Bali, like even small businesses like small restaurants, hotels, industries, we are all benefiting of getting water available in our aquifers. But those aquifers are being depleted at a faster rate that are being replenished. So the communities upstream can provide services through 2 different activities to replenish those aquifers and get compensated by those businesses in return. Right? So the second concept is more about multi-stakeholder collaboration. So we do that not in isolation, not going to the communities and say, this is a solution, you should do this, but in a multi-stakeholder collaboration approach. So there is the Bali Watershed Forum, a local organization that involves government, involves businesses, and involves civil society organizations and local communities. So we can come up with the right approach, the solution, the right policy together to make this happening. And the third and fourth concept are mostly about what exactly we're doing and the activities that communities are doing to provide those services. One is building infiltration wells. So where before all the rainwater was filtering into the soil, to the aquifer, and now it's all paved, we build infiltration wells, like an infrastructure borehole. So the rainwater is channeled through that borehole, and it has a bottomless, just rock and filtering material, so the water can penetrate back into the aquifer laterally and to the ground. Right? But that needs maintenance. So the local communities, smallholder, landowners, they maintain the cleanliness of these wells so they can function properly and keep getting rainwater into the ground. And for that maintenance, they get compensated and paid by the businesses. And the second activity, and the last one, I'm not sure if I'm going over time, is about introducing regenerative agroforestry practices in the upstream communities. So we are trying to transform monocrop gated in other areas, and we could bring shared prosperity and have the communities thriving at the same time as our local ecosystem is also thriving. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Oscar. I really like the way you introduced Kopernik. You said it's a research and development laboratory. And I can only imagine that you're probably doing a lot of monitoring and evaluation of these, let's call them experiments, and sharing that with communities. And of course, I'm sure you'll extend an offer that we can do a field trip to go and see some of these experiments happening in the field, right? Okay, with that, I'm going to move on to our next speaker, which is Ruth Matthews from the Stockholm International Water Institute, where she is the Senior Manager and Coordinator of the Source to Sea platform, telling us how urban areas connect with the oceans and all the river freshwaters that link up through them. Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you for the introduction, and I'm really enjoying the different stories here, and I hope I can contribute to the good quality of information that's being exchanged. What I think I can share a story on is working in a municipality in Vietnam where it's called Hoi An, and it's a very important tourism city, a heritage site, and is in a basin that is has very steep hillsides. It's tropical, so there's monsoon rains, and it's near the base or the bottom of this catchment area, river basin, and near the coast. And one of the issues that we worked on with them was around plastic pollution. And so we initiated first with a study of the sources of plastic pollution in the river basin as a whole. And what we found there is that while there was much more population in the urban areas in Hoi An and Da Nang, there was better solid waste management there. And so the source, the volume of plastic was actually coming much more from the rural areas. And so we came down and started working with Hoi An itself and looking at the plastic waste value chain. So once we've used the plastic, what happens to it? And to be able to bring together some ideas about what could be done to reduce the plastic pollution, we brought together 4 different groups. One of them was the public sector, another was the private sector, including tourism companies, the utilities, and then the informal sector, because in rural and developing countries, the informal sector does a lot of the provision of solid waste management services. And we started with each group having their own brainstorming about what were their roles and responsibilities in the management of plastic waste, and how were they interdependent with other actors in this value chain, and what were their needs, or what was limiting them in being as successful as they could be. And then we brought everybody together and mixed them up and had them share their perspectives of their roles and responsibilities and what they needed from each other, and created a collective discussion around what types of actions could be taken. I see I need to actually hold this closer. What actions could be taken collectively to be able to address this issue. And it was very productive, and each group was able to see what they needed to do and how they related to each other. Now, the reason I tell this story is this was very positive, and it was the first time that the informal sector had been invited to this kind of conversation. We had an action plan developed with 60 actions. People took their own personal responsibilities on what they could contribute, as well as understanding how they related to each other and kind of accountability within the system as a whole. However, going back to where I started, the main source of plastic is coming from the rural areas. And the challenge that we had in working with the Hoi An municipal government and the Department of Natural Resources and Environment was that they operate and have a mandate within their own jurisdiction. And yet they could continue to improve their solid waste management services from, let's say, 93% coverage to 95% coverage, but all of that plastic coming from the upstream rural areas was still going to be inundating their waterways. And so it's really important to recognize that cities exist within a system, and we call it a source-to-sea system, because it starts with the land and the fresh water out to the coast and the ocean. And this is one linked up, coherent, integrated system. And so we need to find ways to support cities to be able to do some of the things that you're saying, of recognizing that their benefit, their sustainability, their resilience is really dependent on the system as a whole, and to find ways to build those safe opportunities for cities to work with the rural areas, to be able to have these dialogues and to find these actions that can be supported in the rural areas without putting the city at risk in terms of reaching beyond their mandate, beyond their authority, putting them in an uncomfortable position, so to speak. And so I think this is a really important conversation that we're having. And you started saying that cities are not islands, and yet frequently the planning and strategies and the projects and investments are considered only from their own little island within the basins as the whole. And so I think this is really important for us to find ways to build these relationships that you just mentioned and others have mentioned between the rural and urban areas, all the way from the source down to the sea. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ruth. That's really inspirational, hearing how that was done in that example of really breaking across these different boundaries. And also a good point that you made at the end over there, saying that it's a fine line between the institution having a mandate and trying to protect the source of their water, but going beyond their mandate. And that's a political discussion, which I guess will help the politicians and the leaders to actually have that dialogue. So it sounds like a really great role you played there. Then I'm very, very pleased that we're also joined by Dr. Simeon Kenfak from the African Association of Water and Sanitation. He's the Director of Programs, and he'll come share some experiences of how they are working on linking up the urban areas to the catchments that serve them. Dr. Simeon, can I hand over to you, please?
Thank Anton, and thanks to the participants. I'm from the African Water and Sanitation Association, which is a membership organizations for capacity building of water and sanitation stakeholders in Africa. And these issues of water resilience, and especially talking of protecting water source is very critical, because for my personal experience, I joined AFWASA, it was AFWA at the time, as the coordinator of an Africa program, which was the Water Operator Partnership Program. Water Operator Partnership Program. And this program was to support, through peer-to-peer learning, the utilities to improve their performance of service. And by improving the performance of service, we mean identifying the critical challenge which are reducing or putting down the performance of the utility. This said, but going within the utility, we realize water quality is one of the challenge. And through and from that, we built a program to support utility to improve the water quality. But if the water quality sometimes is from the treatment plant, they ensure that the quality is good. But within the network, quality can also be disrupted. But the key challenge is the water from the source. And the previous speakers have already realized, talking at the urban level, the source of water most of the time is out of the city. That means at the catchment level. And that means before the raw water is already heavily polluted. And how is it polluted? That means sometimes it's human activities upstream. And through what we are going forward, and thanks to TNC, there's currently an initiative, the Source Water Protection Partnership. And you can realize we are moving to Water Operator Partnership, to the Source Water Protection Partnership, which is definitely a great initiative, which will definitely link the operators to the catchment population, where the main pollution of water system come from. And we are definitely very hopeful that this initiative will be a strong approach for us to ensure the quality of water at the urban level. But to get to that, we have to realize how to set up the operationalization of this program. At AFWASA level, we are organized in region per region. And thanks to TNC, we have there are some countries like Tanzania, Zambia, where some initiative of source water has already been implemented. And from the beginning, we will identify, we will assess in this country who have already implemented the source water protection program, and then we will see which of these have performed better, and we will manage to peer this by others who are joining the program, so that those who have already best practice could learn those who are, and by this we think we can we can improve the quality of water upstream, and then this getting at the operational, at the utility level, and with the normal treatment, we can get a good water quality for our population. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kenfak. That is really interesting also to hear how you, as the representing the industry, is actually making that link to the catchment directly. And you're really talking about investing there in green infrastructure, in nature-based solutions. So it's very heartening for me to hear that kind of progress is happening. And you speak about the partnerships that you have with TNC and with others. And I think that's also something that is really coming through in these connections over here. Speaking about partnerships, I would like to invite Mr. Kanyoto Wibowo from Danone, Indonesia to come up and share with us really what's happening in the corporate world. Why would a corporate even be attending the World Water Forum? And I'm sure you've got a lot to share with us, but we'd love to hear more about what you actually are doing. Please, can I hand over to you?
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Introduce myself. I'm Karyanto. I'm the Director Sustainability of Danone in Indonesia. So happy to be here to share on, the topic which is super important for us on water, especially on how we contribute to the sustainability of the waters in catchment or in watersheds, and also how we contribute to the, the catchment area. So just to give you a quick introduction, we operate in many watersheds. We operate in 17 watersheds in Indonesia, which is definitely all of the watersheds are very critical situations. And then perhaps you also exposed to many different conversations that we have here, especially in Indonesia context. Indonesia is still focusing more on water access and also increasing the water capacity. So we are not really go into the integrated water resources management, including also taking care of the upstream or the catchment area. So therefore for us, it is very important and very crucial to contribute in sustaining the watershed where we operate, including also being part of the watershed forum or multi-stakeholder collaboration, including also the one that mentioned by Copernic, by Oscar. We are also one of the buyer of, the payment for ecosystem services in Bali, because we are operate in, in one of the watershed in Bali, which is Ayung. But the story that I would like to share here this morning is more on our initiative in East Java, in Pasuruan watershed, which is this watershed is really having a pressure on sustainability of the water where we operate. So actually in this watershed, back to 20 years ago, there is a big water source called Umbulan with 6 liters per second of water overflowing, self-flowing. But now actually based on the research that we conducted also with the university, the water is only 3,500. So almost half of the water is already disappeared. We initiated the initiative since 2016. It is really multi-collaboration initiative, working together with university, local university, and also France University Montpellier. and then work together also with the TNC Indonesia, and also some other organization like ICRAF and also a local NGO. Of course, we start with the study, comprehensive study on hydrogeology and also socio-economic study to really understand what is happening to this watershed so that the water is significantly reduced. Basically, from the research, actually, we already, established kind of a summary of the initiative. I think this is also quite a good reference to understand what has been done since 2016 up to now in this watershed. But I would like to share you, because sometimes pictures give also a kind of idea on what is happening in Rejo. So actually, from the study, basically, farmers actually do kind of a drilling of water because there is no infrastructures on the irrigations. Basically, there are more than 600 well like this. Like this, more than 600 with 2 to 10 liter per second of water. So imagine from the calculation that we did, the water is overflowing 7 days a week, 24 hours per day, resulting the groundwater is really wasted approximate more than 2,500 liter per second. So this is the situation that actually we face. And at the same time also, when we go to the upstream area, the catchment, massive land use change from the forest becoming agriculture practices where farmers, they plant, the vegetables, and quite massive and a very steep slope. So basically what we are trying to do, of course, in collaboration with many researcher university, we are trying to first disseminate the result of the research, which is very high level research, becoming something which is very understandable for the users, for the government to understand what is happening to this watershed. And then we promote what kind of a scheme that actually we can help the community to address the challenge, which is one of the scheme that we offer is the payment for ecosystem services, where the water user like us and some other water user, including also the municipality water, they contribute to do kind of a conservation upstream, so that the farmers can continue doing agriculture but in more sustainable way. For example, we plant strip grass, and also trenches so that the water will not just run off. But we need to incentivize farmers upstream, because at the end has to be something relevant for the farmers also to improve the livelihood. So this is what we are doing now. It is still piloting. We are trying to invite many other industry to join. It is not always easy, definitely, because some industry say that I already pay tax, and then why I have to bother to to do something beyond the basic obligation that they fulfill. So this is just to give you an idea. Of course, I'm happy to further discuss. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Karyanto. Maybe while I've got you here, I'm going to jump straight in with another question to you, and I'm sure we've all got questions, and I'll give the audience a chance in a moment. What is the incentive for a big corporate like Danone that operates globally to invest in the catchment? Are you doing this as corporate responsibility, or is it actually part of the security of your operational process? I'd just be interested to hear a bit more about that.
So basically it is part of our license to operate, for sure, because it is no longer becoming part of the CSR where we contribute something to the community, but it has to be integrated as part of our business. Because at the end, definitely, in order to operate, we need water. Then we need to make sure the sustainability of the water, and we are part of the, the ecosystem in the watershed. Therefore, it is super important for us to contribute, and then it has to link also with our business strategy. So therefore, actually, in Danone, especially in Danone Indonesia, I know this methodology is still a bit of controversy, which is we set a target or KPI to be positive water impact. So means we give back more water than we take. So through many different initiatives, like the conservation in the upstream area, like tree planting, building recharge well, or trenches, and also the sustainable agriculture, return the waste water clean to the environment. But we measure all of this kind of initiative, and then we are trying to promote by actively engage and participate in multi-stakeholder forum to inspire, the other industry to work with the government, or even we do kind of advocacy to government to put proper like local regulations to regulate the water user to really taking care of the water sustainability. Yeah, thank you.
Great. Thank you very much for that. Okay, now's your chance. I'm sure you do all have questions. I've got a hand up over here, and then I'll look for more questions after that. Please go ahead. You can say who you are and pose your question.
Thank you very much. My name is Sophie Balla. I'm a postdoc at the MGE 360 Groundwater Research Institute. And I want to pick up something that Sharon mentioned, because when we talk about catchments, we initially think about surface water, but groundwater is hugely important and often overlooked, not just as a direct source, but also as a contributor to surface flows via base flows. So I was wondering, on the one hand, to all the panelists, if you have had considerations on how to bring sustainable groundwater use into the picture, how cities can do better in groundwater, and a question particularly to Sharon, what do we need to do to advocate for groundwater to be a bigger part of this conversation, and obviously integrated with surface water, but I think we need to really push for groundwater to be more visible in this.
So thank you for that question. Had I wanted to plant a question, that would have been the question that I would have planted in the audience. It's very, very interesting that just this morning I was reading an article about a recent study that's been released by the Desert Research Institute of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, or part of the University of Nevada system, that's looking at the question of the surface water flows of the Colorado River and how climate change is affecting it in the headwaters. And this is the point about the island, by the way. The Colorado River does not flow anywhere near my community, yet for the municipality, 90% of the water is river water that's delivered through a constructed canal, put in the basins through aquifer recharge, and then pulled out. And so we aren't an island. We're connected to the headwaters of the Colorado River hundreds and hundreds of miles away. And we have a big conference. If any of you are ever in the United States in December and want to hear the dialogue about the Colorado River, come to Las Vegas. It's a fun place to go, and you can go to the Hoover Dam, and you could come to the meeting of the Colorado River Water Users Association. 1,200, 1,300 people meet every year. Groundwater is almost never mentioned. But in this study that I was reading about just this very morning, the study is looking at what is happening to the groundwater due to the climate change and the drying and the heat and the reduced flows. And they predict that whatever the flows of the river or whatever the precipitation will be, the groundwater is problematic. The ground is problematic. There isn't the infiltration both into the ground and out of the ground. And that groundwater is never discussed in these discussions. So the answer, long-winded answer, apologize, Anton, is that we have to have more integration of these discussions and cross-fertilization. And not only have the river people talking about the rivers and the groundwater people talking about the groundwater, but having these discussions integrated. So we have to stop speaking to each other and make it much broader, because it's just not happening enough.
Challenge accepted. Stop talking to each other. Move out of the sector. Dr. Kenfak.
Yeah. I'm happy that the question comes from a student, and you said you are a PhD. Yeah, you are postdoc, whatever. It's a research. This said, I'm still happy that the question comes from a younger person, and we are far in the sector. And when we talk of river water here, just because it's the visible part of the iceberg. In fact, when we look at water source at the catchment level, from the operator perspective, we consider as well river water and source water. Why should we consider source groundwater when we talk of pollution? We all know that in some catchment, maybe landfills for garbage are constructed, and this landfill garbage construction, they are lithivia, which pollute the groundwater. In some country also, the treated wastewater are dumped in groundwater to recharge and we know that there are now new pollutants which are resistant to the existing treatment system, and which with the remaining pollutant which are difficult to be treated, this could definitely pollute groundwater. So please to join the partnership, because your expertise will be helpful. Thank you.
Excellent. You got an invitation over there. You weren't expecting that when you posed the question, I'm sure. With that, I would like to actually give a round of applause for all of our panelists for sharing these stories of inspiration. And thank you very much for the collaboration with the World Water Council for making this pavilion available to us, and for TNC, the good collaboration. And just to say that ICLEI, we're working with governments for sustainability, and we are making sure that we can support them on becoming urban water resilient examples globally. So thank you very much, everyone. Enjoy the rest of the day. Oh, yes, a group photo will be wonderful. Where are we going to do it? Up on the pavilion? Oh, stay over here if you want to be part of the group.
Thank you very much. half hour maybe for feedback and discussion around that, and then so that would be. You had times on there, I know. So maybe do we set after 20 minutes? You want to, or half an hour? Do you want to break off? Like I'm going to ask for inputs and feedback from various people.
Okay. When do you want others from our group?
Pretty much straight off. I'll make a short introduction.
Hi, Peter. You good? My IT guy disappeared. I think he's coming. They're all looking for him. They just switched it. Oh, hi. That's my new IT. So, yeah, can you put it on the big screen? Then we should begin. It's on and you have the clicker like this. Is it working? It has to be on. Perfect.
Okay. That's super.
You're welcome. And the mic is here and you have a second one if you want. There's a mic here. But there is another one if you want. Do you need two?
Yeah, I might want to. I'll hold on to one and then.
Can I have another one?
Check.
Is that your computer?
No. It's theirs.
Because I want to use my computer to look at my notes. How am I going to do that?
I don't know. Industry's license.
Oh, okay. I don't want to project anything. I just want to look at it.
Christopher wants to use his computer for notes.
Up here?
Yeah.
Oh, that's his computer.
No, this is their computer. He has notes on his computer, I think.
Can we close that?
But he doesn't want to project anything. Can you put them both up?
Yeah, I think so. Maybe the other way. The other way. Yeah. Open up that side. Okay. Because all the cables are here, right? Yeah, like that. And I'll plunk my,
Somebody just reminded me that you were presenting on your regional one as well. So
it's right now.
No, the one you did on Tuesday. So it's kind of like, you know, feeding that back in here as well.
Bring
High
that
level.
in as well.
Good morning, everybody. If we could settle down, George. Thank you all for coming. My name is Peter McCormick. I'm the Executive Director of the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. With this session, we wanted to organize this session to have a bit of a reflection while the forum is in our minds and some of the lessons we've learned and what are some of the takeaways, stressing the positive takeaways, but some of the lessons we maybe see we could do better or emphasize going forward. There's basically three goals or objectives in what we're doing here. One is to get that reflection and lessons learned for the next steps. The second is to also talk a little bit about our new strategy, but that towards the end. And then just introduce you to the Water for Food Global Conference next April so that we can, in the medium term, we can think about how we can take some of the thoughts you have and incorporate them into our conference. With that, what I did is asked a few people to just give us a quick overview of their takeaways from the forum. There's been quite a bit of agriculture through the forum in many different ways. It's been dispersed, but we have seen it come out in the regional processes. We've seen it come out in the water, food, energy topics, and there's also been 2 or 3 different sessions on paddies for planets or rice irrigation and methane management. And then all day yesterday there was a topic on water and agriculture that our institute was particularly involved in. So I realize some of you have been in other meetings, so please do, if you're getting a different message or an important message out of a particular session, please do present that. So what I would ask the speakers is to keep their comments brief, and then we can then hand off to everyone who's involved. So with that, Christopher, do you want to take the stand first?
Thank you, Peter. So I'm going to report quickly in 3 minutes, if I can, some of the takeaways of the 4 Water for Food and Agricultural sessions that we were involved in organizing. The first one was solutions to managing water and agriculture within river basins. And what we learned there is that investment in water conservation practices in sub-Saharan Africa, in countries like Niger, Zimbabwe, Zambia, Ethiopia, have been successful in restoring the natural vegetation, improving the water availability, and for agriculture and for the rural communities, and improving the yields of their crops, okay? And the other lesson we learn is that involving youth in this process was very important and successful. Involving the youth to spread the message, work with the farmers, and get the message across. The other session, T1C2, was agricultural water management technologies, practices, and outreach to support smallholder farmers in the global south. And there was a variety of speakers, and speakers noted that it was valuable to learn about and implement lessons that have emerged from traditional and ancient approaches of managing water in the region. For example, the Subak system here in Indonesia, right? That has been going on for thousands of years, right? And they use in irrigating rice here. Also adapt science-based practices for proper agricultural management. And the Ministerial Commission on Water, the representative also gave a short talk, and he's committed to improving opportunities for market-oriented smallholder farmers to irrigate sustainably and get the private sector involved. And the commitment was to share information and undertake joint research to address some of these issues. The third session was on revitalizing existing irrigated areas to be water wise and climate smart. So everyone recognized a wealth of technologies and practices available, but it was important to understand the existing practices to do sustainable development modernization, not only on the technological but on the service side of improvement, right? And in other words, there's no point introducing an efficient irrigation system if you're not going to manage it efficiently, right? So that was the main the point there. And then in rice production, okay, the use of alternative wetting and drying to irrigate rice to mitigate greenhouse gas methane emissions and so forth requires in many places the repurposing of the system, and also developing varieties of rice that are suited for this type of approach, right? Finally, the effective governance approaches for ag water management mostly was on groundwater governance and the importance of proactive and adaptive groundwater management, okay? The process needs reliable data and information to this proactive approach of managing as you go, right? Farmer groups need to be involved in the decisions, right, on the governance, and they have to buy into this process, otherwise it's not going to work, right? And there has to be trust among the farmers and the regulating agency or the group that's regulating, and all based on data and science, right? So finally, those are the main outcomes of the of those sessions. Good networking. The World Youth Parliament for Water president, Teddy Katongo Shifumbano, is right now representing this up in the other session, which is concurrent to this one, the synthesis session. So he gave a talk in TC1 and also is up there representing us. And then to finalize, Peter asked me to touch on the regional process of the Americas that we were involved in the North America report. And the main, Dale Jacobson talked about water and sanitation problems in North America, which are mostly because they're old systems, okay? Some of them have lead pipes, some of them have outgrown their capacity. So there needs to be a lot of investment in that sector to improve. And then I discuss water and agriculture in North America and what we are observing with the introduction of irrigation in typically rain-fed regions in the east of the Mississippi. And that's because of shifting rainfall patterns that are occurring. And irrigation is being used as a guarantee for production and so forth. So that's it, Peter, as a summary. Sorry, I might have gone over the 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chris. That was great. Renata, would you, I think you follow on. We may have stolen your thunder a little bit, but you
Sounds good. Can you hear me okay? Nice. So my name is Renata Rimshaite. I'm a senior program manager at the Dorothy Waterford Global Institute. And I'll just mention a couple of points on groundwater governance. It's going to be quick, as Christopher already mentioned a few of those points. So water governance in agriculture is very important, especially given increases in weather extremes and precipitation variability. And that increases demand for water in agricultural regions that used to be predominantly rain-fed. Water demands are growing in other sectors as well, in the cities and environment. So the absence of strong water governance means not only faster depletion of water resources or sustainable water resource management, but also higher likelihood for increased conflicts among different water users. Water governance needs to focus on local context. And for that, firstly, it is important to understand local groundwater hydrology, so that we understand all the physical aspects related to it. Equally important, I think it is to understand the underlying water law in different geographies. So understanding how water rights are defined and before we can allocate or reallocate those water resources. When the governance approach is bypassed, in some regions we tend to focus on agricultural technology solutions alone. However, that can introduce additional risk to producers. Irrigation definitely reduces risk in agriculture. However, bypassing governance by focusing and investing in technology alone can increase the risk. What I mean is investments in technology often require loans, and they're often made under assumptions that water that is currently here is going to be here in the near future, which is not necessarily the case. And that can lead to stranded assets, so stranded these technologies, and so lower yields and lower profitability, and that has strong implications for farmers, but also those that work with farmers as well. So financial institutions, other stakeholders involved in agricultural production. So solutions need to focus on stewardship, water stewardship, and that requires collaboration among different water users in agriculture. And so that is not just farmers, it's not just researchers and the government, it's also environmental organizations. A large role is being played by the private sector as well. So I think to build trust, we need stronger collaborations between different groups. That's all.
Thank you, Renata. Certainly water resources, technologies, but we also need the institutions. Mark Svoboda with the National Drought Mitigation Center. So drought, it's been difficult to get to the drought sessions when we've been going to agricultural sessions. So Mark agreed to give a quick synopsis on the drought at the conference.
Thank you, Peter, and thank you for the invitation to participate with your team on this. So I think the last water forum I was at, which was in Brasilia, there was the drought. This year I've been to 6 sessions, like sessions on drought. So I think we've seen marked progress in that regard as an agenda item at these meetings. It also feels like the moons and the planets and the stars are aligning globally when we talk about how we coordinate and manage drought between efforts centered around what we call 3 pillars. That is drought monitoring and early warning, risk and vulnerability assessment, and then mitigation policy and planning. And add all 3 of these pillars across most of those sessions. I think the other one that came up quite a bit was financing and scalability. So we have a saying, all droughts are local. I think Renata just touched on local. Interference, is that better? Yeah. So you talk about drought in the terms and context of like GDP, and I think a lot gets lost in the translation. Droughts have a big impact compared to any other hazard, affecting resiliency of agriculture. Why? And I also think it's the most analogous hazard to climate change. If you think about it, it covers potentially millions of square hectares, can last days to decades, and no other hazard has that sort of footprint on agricultural production. Throw in climate change on top of that, changing the way droughts are behaving, we heard a lot about. I've talked a lot about ecosystem drought. I've heard that term here this year. That's a relatively new term in the drought world, maybe less than 10 years old. So that and flash drought. Climate change is changing the behavior of our droughts. With increased temperatures, we see a more rapid recycling of the water through the system. How do we manage that? How do we adapt to that? How do we become more resilient? So those were some of the key themes. And then the last one I'll end with is what's called IDRA. So there's been a lot of talk just in the last 2 years, the International Drought Resilience Alliance. This was coming out of efforts between Spain and Senegal, and now has, like, I want to say 37 countries and an additional 17 to 20 partners, NGOs, and the like, including most of the UN groups, of course. So we're starting to all talk the same language. That's very comforting. It's been a long time coming. Been in this field for 30 years plus, and it seems like now we're all at least talking in the same language. So I look forward to seeing how we progress through this. I'll make a shameless plug for our impact session this afternoon with Jesse. We'll be talking more specifically about drought impacts, so I won't necessarily include that in my talk here because then you won't come. So I hope to see all of you at our late Friday afternoon session at 1 o'clock. Thanks.
Thank you, Mark. That was very helpful. Virginie, would you like to? So Virginie's from FAO. I'll let her introduce herself.
Thank you, Peter. Virginie Gillet, Land and Water Officer from FAO. Maybe just starting with a small anecdote from the first session this morning, 8:30, synthesis session of 2E, if I'm not wrong. And my director, who is here, started asking who had taken a breakfast this morning before coming to the session. And everybody except 3 answered, yeah. But then he also asked, and who is from the agriculture sector in this room? And nobody except 3 raised their hand. So just to make sure that agriculture is very well represented in this forum is something that we're also very much concerned, and we have a very good ally with the Doherty Institute, so that's great. Maybe our view from the forum and then how agriculture has been seen there is that we've heard a lot of food security concern in the ministerial segment. A lot of countries mentioned food security, and that was coming back. So we're also happy that this is a growing message. From the local and regional process also, a lot of different cities were mentioning food supply to their cities as a concern, and that is something that we have to be really hear. So that's nice. But on the other hand, maybe the stronger message we heard at the opening ceremony is that FAO received the Asantu Great World Water Prize. So I feel this is a very strong message. Also, Indonesia, I remember we had one of the meeting maybe 2 years ago, one of the government meeting where Indonesia was starting to present the forum and what they wanted to do, and I could not see agriculture, so obviously I raised my hand, and the answer was clear. Like, it was so obvious agriculture for Indonesia was a priority that it was not even mentioned, but that was their priority. And I think probably this, although the price has been, is the decision from the Moroccan government, I think that somehow also shows that same priority than the Indonesian. So that's my feeling about, and you've been given so many already technical message from the different sessions, so I will stop here. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Virginie, and yeah, congratulations to FAO again on that well-deserved prize, Li Feng. Would you like to add anything, Li Feng, at this point? Your perspective is somewhat different from Virginie.
Thank you. I don't know whether you have read the declaration. The declaration, at least the version we read, mentioned the food once, agriculture zero. So we still have a long way to go, and this is not my first forum. But however, I think the participation of the agri-food sector at the Water Forum is really not that less visible. So we still have a long way to go to bring the food and the agriculture and the water sector together. The award certainly is a great recognition to FAO and its countries. We are a membership organization. We have 194 members. We don't do water resource management in Rome. We do water resource management in all the countries, in partners. It's also a recognition of the agriculture sector. That means agriculture sector is doing something right on water. So I think that need to be celebrated, within all the agriculture sectors. We still have a long way to go to bring these two sectors together. That's why we created Rome Water Dialogue. We want to invite the water sector come to Rome to discuss how we can co-create the solutions to food, agriculture and water. That's why we launched the National Water Roadmap Initiative towards all SDGs. Because we want to support the countries to articulate, to develop their national water vision, the national water strategies, programs, investment plans to achieve SDG 6 and all the others. Sorry, I thank you very much for the opportunity. Sorry it took you much time.
Thank you for your passion, and I think the message from FAO is it's been a good forum, but the mountain's still very high to climb, and so I think that's a very good message. I think next, well, let me go to Marco, because you've been sitting on some of the high-level panels. Introduce yourself.
Yes, thank you, Peter, for this invitation. My name is Marco Arcieri. I am the president of ICID, International Commission on Irrigation and Drainage. I'm an agronomist, so this somehow explains the interest we have in agriculture, because as we all know, the agricultural use of water is the most important worldwide. It has been very interesting, I must say, World Water Forum. I participated to others. As ICID, we have been leading a couple of sessions. One especially was on the Water for Food Energy Nexus with smart agriculture, so all the technological innovations we can bring into the issue of Water Food Energy Nexus. And so I think I also participated to some of your interesting, I'm very much also committed, we are committed as SEID also on drought. Mark knows that we are also part of WASAG, this initiative of FAO, led by FAO, water scarcity in agriculture. And the last thing, we also are now currently very much interested in desalination, because many countries that are part of our organization are asking to play a role somehow in updating what is the state of the art on this particular technique. And I think yesterday there was a very interesting session because it was dealing mainly with the brine mining, which is actually, as cost, operating costs and industrial costs of desalination for seawater reverse osmosis are going down. The main issue that we are dealing with is the disposal of brine. So brine mining can be possible. It has been shown very clearly yesterday in this interesting session by some professors and researchers from Korea and from Qatar, that there is an interest now in these current days, in these times. There is a renewed interest on brine mining, which can be very well disposed of and can be used for industrial purposes, and even now for reduction of CO2. So there is a whole new frontier, I think, that is going to to open. And I think this is another interesting aspect that I will take away with me after these days. Thank you, Peter.
Thank you, Marco. Kind of circling back to drought, but bringing in the health piece, I'll just ask Jesse Bell to give his perspective on this.
All right. Hello, I'm Jesse Bell. I'm at the University of Nebraska Medical Center. I'm part of DWFI. One of the things that I have done is help bring in the public health and health aspect into DWFI, so we have this unique nexus of water, climate, and health. Our session is this afternoon, so please come and see it if you're around. We'll be over in BICC, and we'll be talking about drought, societal impacts, and building resiliency around drought. One of the areas that I'm most passionate about or most interested in is how drought is impacting human health. We've heard a number of conversations around drought here at this conference, and health is brought up. We also have had a number of conversations talking about agriculture. We've been talking about water security, food security, and health has been mentioned, but there's not really a strong presence of health here. And that's one of the opportunities that I see moving forward, especially for DWFI, because we've started to integrate that piece into the work that we're doing. And so we have a unique opportunity to be a leader, but we have a unique opportunity to also kind of pave a way forward in how to potentially do this better. Because when you think about it, if you lose water, if you have a water security issue, if you have a food security issue, what does that become? That becomes a public health issue. That becomes a health issue. And so loss of that system in some way then has direct impacts on human health. And so we got to make sure that we're engaging with public health, and we're engaging with health through these conversations so that they're able to communicate with the populations that they serve. And they're the ones that know who are the most vulnerable and the most at risk to these types of issues when they do occur. 2, youth is a big part. This is kind of a next step. But youth has been a big discussion piece. A lot of people are really trying to push forward with youth. And as an academic institution, I think we have a real opportunity to provide leadership in that capacity to make sure that we have youth and young voices being able to be present at these types of meetings. And so with that, I think there's a lot of opportunity. I think DWFI is in a wonderful spot. And I'm really interested for the next time that we have this conversation so that we can have more health people here to continue to integrate some of these conversations and moving forward.
Thank you, Jesse. So the problem gets more complicated when we spin in health as well. So I think that's all the folks I invited to present, but certainly anyone else that would like to make a comment or have their key takeaways that we're not mentioning in this this morning. Who's been paying attention all week? Yes.
Thank you very much. I just have a quick comment to make. My name is Sophie Balla. I'm a postdoc at the MG 360 Groundwater Research Institute. And I couldn't agree more that we need to bring agriculture into these conversations. But I also want to particularly highlight that we need to bring in the perspective of the farmers themselves, so on the ground. So not just, I don't know, it's not just about bringing big agricultural industry in the room, but understanding how can we support smallholder farmers, how do we really understand how we can help them with better policies, with better technologies, but I want to underline the governance part. Anyway, my point is perspective of the farmer is important.
Very good point, Sophie. That's something probably we haven't done as well this year as we could have. Any other points or questions? Well, with that, I'm sure we can circle back with our time, but we want to move on to the next piece. Just a quick introduction to the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute, if you don't know us. Basically, we partner, it comes down to partners, and that's why a meeting like this is so important at a venue like this. It's finding new partners, but it's also looking to how we can work better with other our existing partners. We work on a number of areas from policy and research, very much engaging with farmers, so I'm very glad you stressed that. and policymakers, but also the investors. And that's probably something that's missing also here are some of the investors. And then sharing knowledge and catalyzing change. So that's what we're doing today, and this is what we need to do tomorrow. Next slide. We are now just establishing our new strategic direction. We're not looking to change a lot, but we're really prioritizing into 3 themes. One of our key advantages is we work a lot with farmers, but it tends to be large-scale commercial farm agriculture in America and in Brazil and elsewhere. But we also work a lot with smallholder farmers, and we want to really leverage these 2 parts of our footprint. And again, working with our partners to what can we take from the digital agriculture in this area and apply it here, but also some of the lessons in the small-scale farmers to here. And as Jesse was saying, this is an area where we really are making a lot of progress. Water quality is an issue. Water quality linked to agriculture is an issue. And then connecting that to human health is clearly a challenge. And another piece that Jesse was alluding to is this is an area that's been in our strategy, but we want to be a lot more intentional about the education and capacity building. This is clearly a huge demand in terms of the personnel to manage water and manage agriculture, and it's an area we want to do a lot more on. And I would say this is one of our strengths in convening and communication, but again, that's something we like to partner with. Next slide. I will hand over to Francis.
Hi, everyone. I'm Frances Hayes, the Director of Communications with the Doherty Water for Food Global Institute. And I think us communication folks are a little bit far between here at the forum, but I've met a few of them from our partners. So I just want to conclude kind of this more formal part by inviting you to our Water for Food Global Conference, which will be held next year. So we're doing it on a every other year basis now. And we invite you to Lincoln, Nebraska. I know some of you have already joined us in the past, but it's a really great conference, a bit smaller scale than this one. We have about 400 attendees, but I think that lends itself well to really meaningful conversation and some solution building. And then we also get the opportunity to show you how we do agriculture in Nebraska and some lessons that we've learned there. So we try to build in a lot of tours and on-site things, tour our greenhouse. We have a lot of expertise. We also are located over the Ogallala Aquifer, so a lot of groundwater knowledge. So also next year we're adding a mini water tour, which will be a fun thing. So it's all about water and food security. We'll have farmers present. We'll visit some farmers on their own land, and it's a great time. So I've passed out a postcard, but if you scan the QR code there, that'll take you right to our website. You also might see our group wearing these Water for Food pins. If you'd like one of those, you can come find me and I'll grab you one. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Francis. Now we've actually found a very rare individual here at the conference. We've found a farmer. And rather ironically, half an hour ago, I was over at the youth pavilion. I took a picture of a poster that said, basically in French, no water, no food. And this was made by this farmer. So let me hand this over.
Bonjour. Désolée, my English is not good. Je vais parler en français. Il y a quelqu'un, il va me faire des traductions. My name is, mon nom c'est Berdis Mohamed. Je suis mauritanien. Je suis dans le domaine de l'agriculture, secteur privé. Je suis dans le domaine depuis 2012 et jusqu'à 2019, j'ai créé mon propre marque. Je travaille dans le riz. 2022 à 2024, je fais les semences de riz. Nous, en Mauritanie, on n'a pas de problème de l'eau. Mais le problème, c'est quoi? Comment on peut développer l'eau dans mon pays et surtout le riz, il prend beaucoup d'eau. Mais comment on peut développer l'eau en Mauritanie comme le riz, il prend beaucoup d'eau, comment on peut on rentre dans les nouvelles technologies Et ça, c'est un. Et demain, à deux, je vous invite tous, d'accord, me visite mon pavillon pour moi-même et pour les jeunes Parlement mondial de l'eau. Et la titre, il s'appelle « Sans l'eau, il n'y a pas d'agriculture ». Merci.
Yes. So, Berdis Mohammed. I'm pleased to translate for Berdis Mohammed from Mauritania. She's from private sector, in rice sector specifically. And then she's saying in Mauritania they don't have a water issue. They have a river Senegal, as you may know. But they're still struggling in improving the efficiency on the water use in rice sector. So the question she has for us is there any digital technologies or innovation that we could apply in rice sector to improve water use efficiency there? C'est ça? And then she's also inviting all of us to go and visit her poster there in East African Pavilion. In Youth Parliamentarian for Water. Yeah? C'est bon? C'est bon. I think I got everything. So anyone want to answer that? Yeah? I think my director wants to say something about it.
Rice is a very special crop. So for other crops we can use drip irrigation, but not for rice. But certainly you don't need to keep rice always in water. And there is called rice interfaction system. So from the cropping to growing to harvesting, indeed, there's a certain time you need to add water, but you don't need to keep the rice always in the water. So through that interfaction system, and indeed it's come from Africa, Madagascar and Kenya and many countries. Then it's also learned and replicated in India, and it can be done through this sustainable rice interfaction system. You can reduce at least 30% of water use, but that also means you improved the efficiency of fertilizer you put it into the rice paddy, and then you can still achieve at least the same production level, even increase. So that is the system that has been, promoting in the rice sector. Thank you.
Can FAO in Mauritania help her? Yeah. So, yes, Marco.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to add that there is some interesting experiment. There are some interesting experiments, field trials we are conducting in the northern part of Italy. Maybe not many people know, but Italy is the most important rice producing country in Europe. It's a lot of export for us. It's very important for our commercial activities. So there are several trials that have been carried out in these recent years with drip irrigation on rice. Some international companies, some irrigation companies are conducting and giving their assistance to farmers for trying to solve the main problem we are facing in this part of northern eastern part of Italy is the weed management of weeds. But the result seems to be encouraging and promising, so it is something that is going on, and we are currently working on this as ICID also to see if this kind of technical results can be further disseminated and applied in other parts of the world. I just wanted to add this for the information for the sake of the discussion.
Thank you, Marco. And then in that session yesterday afternoon, there was quite a bit on rice. FAO led that session, so a lot on rice.
Hi, Peter. I just want to make a comment because sometimes I think it was this wrap up of what's happening about agriculture in the forum. But after the Forum of Brazil, and the Forum of Brazil influenced so much the sector that they created in the forum a commission in the National Agricultural Commission, the confederation, and even in the government, the ministry create an area to organize the farmers to participate in the water management system that we have there in Brazil. Because before it was like this. It was each one by themselves and no organization in the speech and in what they want. It was not organized. And the forum has a great impact, and for the first time CNA, that is represented by Jordana, that's why I'm called her from our pavilion there to come here. She's a farmer, and she's a small farmer representing big farmers of Brazil in the not only the big, no, you are more or less, but it's amazing, and it's an impact of the forum, so a clear impact for me. I'm George Werneck, I'm sorry, and I am a researcher in Embrapa, the Brazilian Corporation for Agricultural Research. So thank you. I just want to give this as something that must be added as a result of this kind of event.
Yeah, I think that's it's good that we've got that connection. I'd forgotten that had happened in the Brasilia Forum, so that's great to bring that up. Anything else? Any other comments? Any more farmers hiding in our midst? Well, I really appreciate you being here. I think we've got a lot more work to do. At a very high level, what George just reminded me of is what would we do different with this forum? I think one thing, it's tough to make all these things work, and it tends to be quite dispersed. But what I also saw was the regional processes tie a lot of these things together. So perhaps we need an agricultural and food process in the forum to actually tease these ideas out, because it's really pulling them all these ideas, like the very good material on rice that was presented in different sessions, but it wasn't pulled together. And I think that would really have been helpful to do this formally. But I'm not sure I'll be involved in designing the next forum, but I think something we should maybe, instead of a forum, we try to take that idea forward. Yeah. Any other ideas, Li Feng? Yeah. Any other additions? Again, thank you very much. It's great to have allies in the room and trying to take this issue forward.
That's a photo mall.
Very nice one, very heavy.